Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Last week we took you through, if you're new to iRacing, what do we do next? Today we're going to get a little more in-depth off of that video. We're going to go into some steering wheel and some pedal stuff, as well as some little tips and tricks that you can do to make your time in iRacing more enjoyable, more consistent, and so you can have a lot more fun. So let's jump into this thing and we'll break it all down for you. Okay, so as most everybody who's watched my channel knows, I predominantly use Moza gear for my steering wheel and my pedals, with the exception of my H pattern shifter, which is a Fanatec Club Sport V2. My main thing that I want to show you is what we're seeing with the software and certain things that you can do to help you make your racing better and more enjoyable. Now, I know I mentioned in last week's video, one thing that you really want to do is make sure that you are giving the game as much from your wheel as you possibly can, or vice versa. So the first thing that you should really look at doing in all of this is take a look at your wheelbase, your wheel, however the software is for your wheel. Make sure that the game force feedback intensity is set to 100%. I say to do this because then that way, if your wheelbase is set to 100%, it can take whatever the game throws at it. Think of it as you're driving your own car down the road, and you can feel all of this stuff, right? We can feel the tires bounce. We can feel the pebbles on the road. We can feel the tire if it gets loose. Now imagine that someone went and cut all that feedback to your hands in half. So like we put the wheelbase at 50%. By cutting that in half, now you don't know, okay, you're going down a snowy road and the tire is slipping, but you don't feel it in the steering wheel. It's a dead feel. There's nothing there. It doesn't give you input, so you don't know how to react. So by going to 100% on that wheel, we can go ahead and get as much feel into our hands, into that wheel, as we can, right? So like I said, number one, set this thing to 100% as far as game force feedback intensity goes. There are some games where you may want to lower this, but at least for iRacing's sake, we're going to set with this premise. Now, the other thing that you would have seen in my video, and I'm going to turn my camera off so you can see this, is you can see right here we have our min-max, and we can also see how the pedals move and whatnot. If you notice, my clutch goes up really quickly. And so I've set a max point and some dead zones and things of that nature. Like if you notice, my brake pedal's not registering till you get about a quarter of the way into pushing, and that's on purpose. And we can actually go into here. So if you notice, my brake pedal's not really registering. I'm about halfway down on that pedal right now. The idea is, and it's something that a lot of people don't even realize they do, they let their feet rest right on the pedal, which is totally fine, completely acceptable, totally normal, and I would expect you to do that with your brake pedal as well, with the idea that in the event that you see a wreck, you need to use the clutch, whatever, your foot's there, you can instantly push and you have instant reaction, right? The problem is some pedals don't have the resistance to keep that plate up or to keep the pedal upright. So if you're kind of a little heavy on that pedal, it may cause it to move ever so slightly and start to register. And obviously you don't want to have that with your brakes, because in your brake dragging slows you down, all that sort of thing. So some things that you'll want to do is you'll want to set dead zones in your pedals. I do that mainly for the brake and the clutch, especially if I let my foot rest on it. Just so that way it's not registering that, hey, this should be engaged while I'm trying to race. Now, if you notice with my clutch as well, the output curve is very steep. I do that because then I can basically turn my clutch into a short throw clutch. So if I press this down, we're not even halfway and we're at 100% clutch. So if I go any further, it's completely engaged. but I don't have to really move my foot much to get the clutch fully engaged. That's a personal preference thing as well. Some people like it to be linear, just like the gas pedal is. But I like to have it short throw. Even in a personal car, I don't like a long throw clutch. My brother had an 84 Chevy half ton that had one, and I absolutely hated it. So that is something that you'll want to adjust your personal preferences. I like to definitely let my foot rest on the brake pedal, so that dead zone at the start is very helpful. Because I get to about halfway, and then the brake pedal starts to kick in. So something that you'll want to be mindful of. The other thing that I've noticed, and at least this is with Moza pedals, on the high end, I like to move my max back 2%. So 98% is 100% in game. The reason for this is, for some reason with the Moza pedals, every once in a while, it won't register that last 2% for some reason. And I don't know if that's a Moza problem or if that's specifically an iRacing problem. But at least if you're at 98, you jump in, you're not going to have a problem. And moving just that little bit, you're not going to notice that much of a difference as far as how the pedal's going to register in the car. You're not going to notice, like if you use my clutch mapping style for your throttle, you're going to notice it, because you're going to hit halfway, the thing's going to light the tires, and away you go. So like I said, dead zones sometimes on both ends of the pedals are a real help. The other thing is make sure that you're recalibrating your pedals fairly often. I would say once a week is a good thing to do. These are mechanical devices. They wear out. Things wear, calibrations get off, updates can mess things up. So make sure that you're getting in, you're recalibrating your pedals once a week, just to make sure that everything is reading exactly the way that you need it to, and you can have the most fun that you can have in iRacing. Now, as far as the wheelbase goes, this is where things can get even more interesting, depending on the car that you're driving, what wheel you're using, all of that stuff. Now, again, we're going to use Moza for this, that is what I have in front of me. The generally accepted steering angle is 900 degrees, but there's a caveat. So with stock car stuff, or NASCAR, whatever you want to call it, 900 is generally accepted as correct. When you get into Formula and sports car, that changes. It can go down to 540-ish. Some guys I've seen run 360. That, again, personal preference. If you're at Indy in an Indy car, I don't think it's going to matter, but you get on a road course with it, that's where it's going to come in. So by default, I would set to 900, because you can jump in anything and remap it. So in your software, make sure you're at 900. You can adjust in game and be fine. So I would generally set to whatever you plan to run the most. If you try a 540 on an 87 in iRacing, you're gonna burn up your right front pretty freaking quick. I can attest to that one. So don't set to 540, set to 900, and you'll be pretty happy. A lot of these other settings, like the game force feedback intensity, you've already set that earlier. Wheel speed is basically it's return to center kind of deal. Now, as far as like advanced settings, things of that nature, if you have a wheelbase that allows for you to change the wheel, like with the Moza, we can take it off, we can put on a different wheel, that sort of thing. Make sure that you're setting your wheel inertia correct. So if a wheel weighs a little different than another wheel, you may want to set that. Obviously with Moza, if you're using a Moza wheel, you can easily select any of these other wheels, and it will adjust that wheel inertia, which will then affect your force feedback as you're doing racing. The force feedback equalizer, I like to just leave it at 100. I know you can find things on Boosted Media with different changes, and you can change all this to your personal preference too. I just like to leave it the way that the game wants to send it to me, and then I feel it that way. Pretty basic. I probably could do some more tweaking, but again, I kind of like to leave it to the game. Your force feedback curve, you can really tweak with this too. I like a linear curve, again, because it gives me whatever that car is feeling. You can have it, you know, start out low and sweep to high, start out high and sweep to low. It just kind of all depends. All right, so now that we're in sim, I know in the last video I walked you guys through how to calibrate the steering wheel, the pedals, and the gearbox. So we're not going to run through all of that again. But obviously, like I said, we had set the wheel to be a 900 range. So what you can do, say we're jumping into a formula car, we can turn this wheel range down. The one thing that you want to make sure of, because this will adjust, is set your mapped range to match it. So if you're in a formula car or a GTP, GT3, whatever we're racing, if we want to go down to that 540, we can easily do that without having to jump out. We just make a quick adjustment here. So make sure the wheel range and the map range match. That's going to be your key thing there. Now, I also talked about this in the last video, is if you're putting wheel or putting pedals into the game, obviously you want to make sure that you're setting it correctly. If you have a load cell pedal, like a Moza SRP, a CRP pedal, I think it's the Fanatec V2, V3 pedals, anything that has that load cell in it, you're going to want to make sure that you check this on, so that way you're using the load cell side of it and not just the angular. I use 100% load cell. I don't use any of the angular stuff on my pedals anymore. Once you start using specifically load cell pedals, it changes how you drive the car. I'm not saying that you have to go out and get a set. If you're just doing oval stuff, probably not that big of a deal. But if you are doing a lot of road, it would be something to invest in the future, especially if you've got something like a Logitech G923 or G27. I would look at upgrading those pedals at some point, so that way you get the full effect of a load cell. That being said, we can set our max range, so we can make it to where even in game we can adjust where that pedal movement comes into play here. Your clutch, you can adjust the bite point on the clutch. You know, do you want it to bite at 100%? Do you want it to bite at 50%? All of that kind of thing to make it to where it's more customizable for you, more enjoyable. I don't use a launch trigger. I personally have a different starting technique than a lot of people. It works quite well for me, so until it stops working well, I'm just going to keep it that way. But one thing of note, if you look at the pedal bars that are in the input calibration section, you can see them light up here. You see how quickly the clutch moves to max out. So it does pick up, it pulls in from the software that you use how your pedals are already set as you calibrate with them. And if you look right there, that's max. My pedal's not even all the way down yet, so it does take my 2% pullback on that. Because I did notice with these pedals at one point in time, for whatever reason, Moza had a problem with their software where it would show 100% in pit house. When you got into iRacing, it wouldn't quite hit that top bar of that 100%. So that's when I came up with the conclusion of pulling it back to 98%, and that's why it works the way that it does. So with all of that, this should hopefully get you everything you need to do to be able to get your pedals working the way that you want it, get it adjusted the way that you want it, and get your steering wheel feeling more lifelike, if that makes sense. So hopefully this gives you guys some direction on what you need to do with whatever you're using for pedals or a steering wheel, and gets you racing the way that you want to race. Hopefully this video was really helpful. If you have any comments, questions, things you want to see in future Tech Thursday videos, let me know in the comments below, and I will try and get that incorporated into a video for you guys. And until then, we'll see you guys at the races.